And then as they enter the logic school, we begin to manipulate those pegs, and we're going to practice with that a little bit. This particular year, I have the Latin 2 class that'll be going at least, I'm hoping 3/4 of the way, but we'll see how far they get. And then I have one class that will be Latin 3, 4, and 5 all together. And the Latin 3 kiddos will be going all the way through this. And the Latin 4 will be in the Henley 2 book, and they'll be translating documents from Caesar's Gallic War. And then the Latin 4 student will be translating from the Aeneid. And so I'm still kind of trying to wrap my brain, but I think we're going to do charts and vocab kind of together. And the other vocab will be preview, but they'll only be responsible for their session, and we'll kind of review together some. And then one day a week I'll have specific lessons for each part with activities for the others to work on, and then maybe we can come together for some games. So I'm excited for that opportunity, because I think for the students that are going to be going through this whole book, it will be really good. Good for them. Welcome. You're fine. Well, I was just talking a little bit about the flow that we have here for what we're doing at Trinity. Okay? Yeah. When your student, vocabulary is important. This is a stack of vocab from Henley 1. Okay, it's a lot of words. And so the first time I made flashcards, I had them all white, and then I found myself looking for verbs and other colors. So I try to color coordinate. Like my nouns are all hot pink, and my verbs are all green, and my adjectives and here are orange, pronouns are blue, and I think prepositions are like yellow. So I think these are adjectives and adverbs are orange. I would recommend that you do that. That way, if your student is saying, oh, we're going to have a verb quiz, they can just grab all of whatever their verb color is and they can review that. It is a good idea to review vocab every day. And I know students, like Latin is just a couple of days a week, but if you only look at it a couple days a week, you lose that vocab. Even if they only spend 5 minutes flipping through their cards, if they look at those words every day, it's very valuable. I always have on Fridays study vocab and charts. I think that frequently gets waylaid. So if you can encourage your student in anything, it's to study their vocab and charts. That will benefit them a lot, okay? Now, I want to just spend some time doing some Latin, just because I want you to see how they put all those memory pieces together when we hit 7th grade. But before I do that, I want to find out if you guys have specific questions.
You guys covered the lower, right?
What?
Lower grade, like 3rd and 4th grade.
3rd and 4th grade, all they have to do is memorize the chart.
Mm-hmm.
That's all they have to do. They don't have to learn how to manipulate it. They just have to learn how to. And your instructor, did they share with you last year the songs?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just put the songs in, let them sing the songs and learn the endings. When they hit 5th and 6th grade, they'll begin to write them some and do some more activities. Mrs. Young was saying at lunch, pay attention to the macrons, which are these lines, okay? So I've written the first declension noun endings here. Declensions are just a fancy name for a noun family. Your first declension noun endings, this is a family where they all share these endings together. But if you notice, this is an A and this is an A, but the only difference between nominative singular and ablative singular is the fact that this A has a line over it, which is called a macron. So when I say pay attention to macrons, they matter as they move on, because each of these cases performs a different job in the sentence, and I'm going to show you how that works. So one of the charts they memorize is nominative, subject, genitive, possessive, dative, indirect object, accusative, direct object, object of the preposition, ablative, object of the preposition. So the case determines the job that the noun does in the sentence, okay? So if I write Luella like this, it has to be the subject of the sentence. But the line over it means it has to be the object of the preposition. So that's why I say pay attention to the macrons as they're learning those, okay, when they start writing them, because it does make a big difference. That makes sense?
Sorry.
You're okay. That's all right. Talking is good.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. And let's see, where's the other page I have? I lost the memory work page. Do you have one? Okay, thank you. Not sure where I set one down at. Oh, it was underneath. Do you need another one, Kelly? It's here. Thank you. Okay, so in Latin, word order is not important. Okay, so the words are just up there, and what makes the difference is the endings of the sentences, okay? So, I'm gonna write it in English. The girl loves the queen. Queen loves the girl. Girl loves Queen's forest. Okay. Now, if we look at these sentences, they both involve girl and queen, right? But they're doing different jobs in the sentence. So let's use our Shirley Grammar confirmation to determine the jobs. And this is, we go back to this in 7th grade. So who loves the queen? Girl. That means girl is our subject. Noun. Is girl singular or plural? Singular. What is being said about the girl? The girl
Loves.
loves, that's our verb. The girl loves who or what? Queen. So that's our direct object. Is our direct object singular or plural?
Singular.
It is singular as well. Okay? Now let's do the same thing here. The queen loves the girl. Who loves the girl? Queen. That's our subject. Noun. Singular or plural? Mm-hmm. What is being said about queen? The queen
Loves.
The queen loves who or what?
The girl.
Girl, direct object. It is singular. Okay, the girl loves the queen's forest. Who loves the queen's forest?
The girl.
Okay, singular again. What is being said about the girl? The girl.
Loves.
The girl loves who or what?
Forest.
The girl loves the forest. A direct object. It is singular. Okay, now then, what is queen's? It is an adjective. What kind of adjective is it? It is a possessive adjective. In Latin, our possessive adjectives are genitive case. So this will have to be genitive. Now, with this apostrophe, is this singular or is it plural?
Singular.
It is singular. What would it look like if it was more than one queen's forest? Look like that, right? There's a lot of English reinforcement in Latin class, y'all. Okay? And your students that struggled with parts of speech will struggle again when they hit Latin. And so I have typed up a question confirmation flow for them to practice with that, just because that can be tricky. Now, on your handout I gave you, you have some vocabulary words. And we're gonna say these together. So like we chant vocab together. So I'll say Huela, Hueli. You repeat after me. Huela, Hueli, girl.
Girl.
Okay? Regina, Reginae,
Regina, Reginae.
queen.
Queen.
Silwa, Silwai,
Silwa, Silwai.
forest.
Forest.
Amo, Amare, Amawi, Amatus.
Amo, Amare, Amawi, Amatus.
That means I love, to love, I loved, loved. Okay? I love,
To love, I loved, loved.
Okay, now as we said those, what seemed odd to you as we pronounced them? The V's are always W's.
G's are hard.
The G's are hard, they're like G. And AE is pronounced like a long I. So this AE is like a long I, okay? It is. Mhm. Right, so if we are going to write these in Latin, we have to remember, one of the charts they memorize is that the nominative case is always the subject, the genitive case always shows possession, the dative case is the indirect object. This is the direct object. Sometimes it's object of the preposition, and this is always an object of the preposition, okay? And to know which one of these you use is memorized with your vocab. So the preposition in Latin means in or on. If you use in the with an object of the preposition in an accusative case, it means there's motion going into something. But if you're using it with the ablative case as the object of the preposition, then it means like they're sitting there, not movement. So if the army is marching into the forest, then the preposition forest will be accusative case. But if the army is camped in the forest, then forest would be ablative case. And we learn that as we learn that vocabulary. Okay, so that's why both of these say object of the preposition. Right? Now, what is our Latin word for girl? It's on your page. Puella. And so tell me both of the words. We have puella, puelli. This is always, when we have a noun in Latin, it is the nominative singular and then the genitive singular. To figure out what your stem is, and stem is what we add our endings onto, you always go to the genitive singular and you chop off the ending, okay? The reason we do that is because when we hit third declension nouns, the nominative is sometimes altogether different than the genitive. For example, when we have rex, regus, which means king, there's a big difference. I don't just take off my X and add my endings. I go to the genitive and cross this off. So if I were to decline rex, regus, the first word would be regs, but the stem on everything else would be reg. So third declension gets kind of funky, but third declension is the reason why we use the genitive singular to form our stem, okay? So we have our stem for girl, and it is uel, and we have to use nominative because we said it's our subject, and we have to use singular, so we're going to put an A on there, okay? You with me? Kind of, sort of? All right, good. Okay, now, usually the Latin verb goes all the way at the end of the sentence, okay? And if you look on the very bottom of your page, I've written out the first conjugation verb of amo. Amo, amas, amat, amamus, amatus, amant. You say it. Amo, amas, amat, amamus, amatus, amant. One more time. Amo, amas, amat, amamus, amatus, amant. Okay? If we're in English and I have first person singular and I use a pronoun, what would I say? First person singular pronoun would be, I'm talking about myself. I. That's what amo means. I love. Okay? First person singular of a verb has the pronoun I. Now, our Latin verbs have the pronoun associated with it. So, amo always means I love. Okay? Now, second person is always you. You can be, I can speak to one person, you, or I can speak to the whole class as you. So you can be singular or it can be plural, depending upon if you're speaking to one or more than one. Amos is you, singular, you love, and amatus is you, plural, love. Third person, singular, is translated as he, she, or it loves. Amant, third person plural, would be they love. Okay? The reason I go through that is because my verb has to match my subject in number. Which means if this is singular, then my verb has to be singular. Okay? So if girl is singular, and I didn't say the girl, what pronoun would I use for girl?
She.
She. Is she first person, second person, or third person?
Third person.
Third person singular. That's how you know what verb you need to use. Okay? So my verb is going to be amat. Okay? Now, queen is a direct object. What case am I going to have to use for my word queen? Accusative case. And how do I know that? From my memory work. Okay? From my memory work. Have you noticed how many charts we've used just in this one sentence? It is a lot. Okay? So, we've got to go back to our vocabulary. What's my words for queen?
Regina.
Regina. Yes. And which one of those am I going to use to find my stem? The genitive. And so I'm going to take that ending off. My stem becomes regin. Now, it's direct object, which we know is our accusative case, and it's singular. So I have to take this am and put it on there. Okay? Now, when we look at this, the only way students can recognize what is the subject versus what's a direct object is by those endings. The placement in the sentence doesn't matter, okay? If I didn't even have puella, let's say I just had reganam amat. Okay, this has to be the direct object, which means my subject is right here on my verb. He, she, or it loves the queen. So I have a pronoun as my subject instead of a noun. And I know that because this is a direct object, so it cannot be the subject of my sentence, even though it's the first word in my sentence. Okay, that sometimes really throws students, because in English, usually if you have a noun first, that's going to be your subject if it's not a prepositional phrase. But in Latin, you've got to look at those endings to figure it out. Okay? Yeah.
And I know in Latin there's no articles like that.
There's
right?
no article
Are
adjectives.
there any pronouns?
Yes.
No articles.
Pronouns have their own sets of charts.
Okay.
Yeah. In Anna's class this last year, we worked and developed some pronoun songs to help. We did, I think we did first person ones to This Little Light of Mine, and we have fun with pronouns. But it's a lot. It's like the noun charts all over again. And your adjectives have their own charts too, and those adjective charts you have, because adjectives are based upon gender, so you have a masculine, a feminine, and a neuter for each adjective word, but they match our noun endings pretty solidly. Okay, the queen loves the girl. Okay, so this time on queen, what ending am I going to use?
Objective singular.
Thank you. So we're going to use Velynna. Loves, it's still third person, right? She loves the girl. So what am I going to put on Velynna this time? Well done. And then here we'll have Velynna loves the forest. So forest is Silwai, but it's my direct object. So what is forest going to be? Silwam. And then queens is going to be genitive singular, because that's where our possessive. So it'll be Velynna. Okay. Now, I made these sentences so that we only used one noun declension chart. But those of you who've had students in Latin, how many noun declension charts do we have? 5. And so your student, that's where vocabulary becomes really important. They have to be able to identify not only, okay, my Latin word for girl is puella, puelli, but when I have puella, puelli, that's a first declension noun, which means I use the first declension noun chart. If I had rex regus, and this was the king loves the queen's forest, king is a third declension noun, so I not only have to remember that, but have to remember to use my third declension noun chart. Okay, does that make sense? There is so much with those memory pegs, and the reason I reinforce that is I think sometimes families get bored memorizing those charts for 4 years, but they need to know them cold. Like they need to just be able to say third declension, accusative, singular is this. Like they just need to know that. Now I wanted you to see, this is what students will look at. And so being able to not only know what ending it is, but being able to look at the endings and identify potentially what case it is, helps them when they go from Latin to English. Okay, so those charts can work both ways for families. Okay, now, as we worked through this, what steps did we do? What did I do first?
Identify words in the sentence.
I parsed the sentence in English, okay? What did we do next?
Identify the cases. Is that part of parsing?
We identified the cases. So after we found out subject, then sometimes I have students write, okay, this one has to be nominative, this one has to be accusative, okay? Then what did I do next?
Translated.
Plural, singular.
We did singular and plural, and so then I had to go to my vocab and remember what vocab went with what. So when I went over here to my vocab, what did I have to do with my vocabulary?
Stem.
We had to find the stem, and then we had to put on the appropriate ending, and we had to do that for each word. The reason I'm telling you the steps is when your student gets stuck and says, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, you can say, okay, well, let's parse the sentence. Can you tell me what parts of speech? What do you know about those parts of speech as it pertains to Latin? Is there a particular case that belongs to the subject? Is there a particular case that belongs to the direct object? And you can help kind of guide your student with questions. Now, I wanted to talk about, let's say I wanted to add large. to this. Okay, the girl loves the queen's large forest. Latin adjectives, the adjective for large is magnus, magna, magnum. We have first and second declension adjectives, and we have third declension adjectives. When you have three parts listed in the vocabulary, you know it's a first and second declension adjective. I think they're the easiest ones because in first and second declension adjectives, the one that ends in us declines like the second declension masculine nouns. The one that ends in declines like the first declension feminine nouns. And the one that ends in declines like second declension neuter nouns. So the charts are the same as their noun charts, okay? Now, when we get ready to add an adjective, whatever the adjective modifies, the adjective matches that three ways: in case, in number, and in gender. Okay? So the case is if in the sentence this is accusative, because it's a direct object, then the adjective also has to be accusative. If this is singular, then the adjective also has to be singular. Every Latin noun has a gender associated with it. If it is first declension noun, it will be feminine with the exception of nata, natai, sailor, which is masculine. All other first declension nouns in Latin are feminine. So since this is a first declension noun, this will also be feminine. Okay? When we get to adjectives, there's a lot of thinking that goes into place. Okay, so that means I'm going to use magna, and it is going to have the same ending as forest does. So this would be right here. Magnum. So, okay? As students are beginning to work with this, I try to emphasize that gender. When you get to third declension, you have some gender exceptions. Nata, natai is a gender exception as well. Okay, do you have questions on this? Those charts are huge. We'll be okay. We'll get there. We'll get there.
You have me until the adjective. I'm like,
The adjective.
Lord.
Well, you know what? This will get us. If you were good till then, you're good for a long time.
Well, right now, while you're
Well,
standing there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Exactly.
You will get there. You will get there. Okay.
Can you go over the colors of the flashcards?
It doesn't matter. You can pick whatever colors you
Okay.
want. I'm just saying that's what I chose. But I'm just saying it's a good idea to have nouns separate from verbs.
Okay.
And you can
Okay.
use whatever colors you want to use.
What happens if you have a student coming in that wasn't here before and
Yes.
hadn't been studying these charts?
So at the family interview, I shared the folder with all the songs and gave them the information. But we still, at the beginning of class, we will chant the charts and we will sing the song. But it may mean they have to spend a little more time studying at home too. Like, we do everything we can to equip, but some of that they just have to choose to absorb too, right? But we do try to. Okay, we have a little bit more time. I had another, we'll translate some together.
I'm still stuck in the first one.
It relates.
It comes with time.
Yeah.
It does come with time and with looking at it.
Mine is how to pronounce it. You know, because we've always had English.
So,
So,
this is I, is, as, is.
And it's part of our song and our chant. From, as an Okie, trying to teach Latin sometimes, we would have a really good time, because we go back in the front of the book and it has a key of enunciation. And so anytime that I would pronounce something with a backwoods accent, we'd have to stop. All right, and Jacob Watkins, one of my students, was the one that was always like, let's go back to the beginning, Mr. Snare. Like, okay.
And
Yeah, go ahead.
there, I can try to send it to you, but on YouTube there is somebody who's a visual learner created a chart, and they have an eyeball for every time it says AE, where it's supposed to be pronounced I, they have an eyeball, and I'm like, oh, I. And like, it's a good visual chart too that helped. I can try to send that to you, but
I would appreciate that.
I would
appreciate that too.
I'll see if I can find it again, but I'm pretty sure I saved it.
There's flashcards, there's flashcards of that as well. It's from a Latin program, I can't think what that's from, and I copied them off for Nora at one point. You can make flashcards out of them, but it's a real good visual key for each one of these as well.
That's good.
You're not.
well, she doesn't have a problem with it.
Well,
I've got the problem, and I'm just looking at her. And she said, this is how you say it. And I'm going, well, that don't look like how you pronounce it.
Well, I know my son, like he's just second grade, but like he likes to just, on those grammar sheets, he just wants to start at the beginning and just assume that the pattern's gonna follow for every sentence, and he just wants to put subject, noun, verb, does it, and race through it, whereas learning to ask those questions and like pulling back and asking the questions and repeating the answers, and like that part will play in.
it plays in later.
But he just, like,
Yeah.
and it's cool to have an older one and seeing where that's gonna play in later, but if, I think all of the little ones are like, oh, this is the same pattern over and over and over again. And they're
But really the purpose is to learn that question confirmation flow, because that's what carries with them. Okay, so we have this sentence, natai teram ladont. Okay, and I've got some vocab for you listed here. So teram looks like your terra terrai, which means land. Natai is like natai, which means sailor. And ladont, if you remember, we had O-S-T mus tis nt as our verbs, where this is first person, second person, third, and this is singular and this is plural. So if we look, NT, and I always check out my verb, because if it's over here plural, that's a hint to me that my subject's gotta be plural too. Because your subject and your verb have to match in number, okay? So this particular word means, if you look over here, ladont, means what?
praise.
They praise. Which one of these words is going to be your direct object? Teram, how do you know?
Because of the ending.
Because of the ending. When we see that AM, it's accusative case. Is it singular or plural? Singular. If it were plural, it would be us, okay? And so that has to be our direct object. Now, does it make sense that this would be a subject? Let's look. Nominative plural is I. Now, it could also be, I can be genitive singular or it can be dative, but we don't have, it wouldn't make sense for it to be an indirect object at all. That wouldn't be logical. And we don't have anything that it is possessing, so that wouldn't make sense. So it has to be nominative plural, okay? And that's how you figure it out. When you have an ending that's like that in several ways, you just figure out what makes logical sense based upon the passage, okay? So this one is plural. So we have nominative plural. So how would we translate this? The sailors praise the land. Well done. Okay? Make sense? I'm seeing confused faces. Does that make sense?
With you standing there, yes.
All right.
What's that? Is that like the second? No, your other.
These are verbs. These are verbs. And these, that's for nouns.
Okay.
Okay? These are verbs. Those are nouns. Okay, so look at your second. Let's look at, well, you pick. Which one looks happy to you? 1, 2, 3, or 4. We have time for one more.
I just like to pronounce them because of Thomas.
What do you like?
Number 4.
Number 4. Okay, let's do that. Which word did Thomas like? I need to know.
Prowinkii.
Okay. Non-ladont. Okay. So, as we look at prowincium, is that going to be a subject? It's the first word of our sentence. Is it going to be the subject? No. How do you know that? You always have to look at the ending. AM always means accusative. Okay? So that this has to be, this is accusative singular, which means it's your direct object. So even though it's first in the Latin sentence, it will come after our verb in English because the direct object always comes after the verb in English. Okay, known is an adverb that means not. And what did ladont mean? They praise. Now, since I do not have another noun, what has to be the subject of my sentence? They. Now we can add the helping verb. They do not praise. And we can add the what? Province. They do not praise the province. Well done. Well done.
So they don't use do, the, the.
You can add that in, the helping verbs. You kind of have to adjust that. And they don't have words for the article adjectives either. But something that they do that is different than us, they have a lot more verb tenses than we do. They're very specific about verbs in time and place. So, verb charts are ready. Okay, can I answer any questions for you? I wanted you to see how those charts all work together. Wanted you to understand our Latin flow. Latin forces a student to concentrate and teaches memory skills. And it helps them to learn to look at everything and small pieces at the same time. Those are really important skills. I've shared with other people before, but my youngest hated Latin, and he had a lot of years of Latin. And after his first semester of training, he's an airplane mechanic at school. He came back to me and said, "Mom, I was wrong about Latin." He said, "I can diagnose an engine faster than the rest of the students because of Latin." And I said, "Tell me more."